Before we formally start the conference, let me request Mr. Furqan for the recitation of Holy Quran.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. واضرب لهم مثل الحياة الدنيا كماء أنزلناه من السماء فاختلط به نبات الأرض فأصبح هشيما تذروه الرياح وكان الله على كل شيء مقتدرا. المال والبنون زينة الحياة الدنيا والباقيات الصالحات خير عند ربك ثوابا وخير أملا. ويوم نسير الجبال وترى الأرض بارزة وحشرناهم فلم نغادر منهم أحدا وعرضوا على ربك صفا لقد جئتمونا كما خلقناكم أول مرة بل زعمتم أن لن نجعل لكم موعدا. ووضع الكتاب فترى المجرمين مشفقين مما فيه ويقولون يا ويلتنا ما لهذا الكتاب لا يغادر صغيرة ولا كبيرة إلا أحصاها ووجدوا ما عملوا حاضرا ولا يظلم ربك أحدا. صدق الله العظيم.
Months ago, we were deciding the theme of the conference we were going forward. All the three co-chairs, Dr. Hassan Rana, Dr. Mohsin Bashir, and I felt, in consultation with our dean, Dr. Jawad Syed, that inclusion was a theme that whether you are thinking about the organizations, about our nation, or at the global level, was something that is going to define our future at the local, national and global level. So, and the other thing we had decided from the very beginning about this conference, and you will hear about it more in the next 2 days, was that we wanted not just a purely academic conference, but we wanted to treat this conference as sort of an experiment of transcending academic boundaries. If you have had a chance to look at the academic schedule of this conference, you will not only be hearing from academics doing quality research on organizations and public spaces, but you will also be hearing from people from all walks of life. You will be hearing from disability advocates. You will be people who are working on with the Khwaja Sara, with gender minorities, with informal workers, and you will hear presentations not only English language from international speakers and national speakers, but you will also listen from people who are more comfortable talking in our national language. Internationally, there is a lot of talk about academics living in the ivory towers and not engaging with the practical world of policy and development. So we wanted to have people from all walks of life come together. We will also listen from leading media personnel and policy makers and development practitioners in this conference. So we hope that you create this conference and take part in the generative discourse, hopefully, and be a part of this experiment and hopefully replicate it wherever you are coming from and take the agenda of this conference forward. Now I would like to request Dr. Sohail Naqvi, Vice Chancellor, Lahore University of Management Sciences, to please say a few words about the conference team and the conference. Thank you.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you, Azfar. As an academic, the most difficult problem that one comes across and one hesitates to work in is the one that is most practical. And I first talk about the scientific domain where I live as an engineer. So when you are looking at an engineering issue, the first thing you do is you create simplifications. So if I was, let's say, looking at the design of a sound system for this room, I would say, well, let us assume that it is a square, or that it is perhaps a circle, has a circular roof. Something that will fit into a nice coordinate system. And as we add the practicality, well, actually the walls are at an angle of 15 degrees. Actually, there is a slope in the floor. Actually, there are steps in here. There are obstructions. There are different kinds of material. There is wood involved in this thing. There is felt cloth. The roof is actually a false ceiling, and the false ceiling has little holes in it. And you start getting in the complexity of the actual issue that one is working. In a similar theme, what Azfar has talked about is an academic topic of inclusion, but bringing it to the real world, where we are talking about gender, where we are talking about the color of the skin, where we are talking about people with handicap. We are talking about what is normally referred to as the other, the ones that are not us. They speak Urdu maybe they don't wear a tie, maybe they belong to a village, maybe they subscribe to a religion that was practiced 5,000 years ago, whatever the case. So this conversation, which the real world lives with on an everyday basis, because your neighbor may perhaps be handicapped in from one aspect or another. How it interacts with organizations, public sector, private sector, and then more specifically, perhaps the academic organization, perhaps electric companies, whatever the case would be. So understanding complex issues as they apply to the real world is actually the ultimate objective of an academic, and it is the most difficult. So I congratulate the organizers of the conference in attempting to put their hands on to an issue that is substantive and is also something that we feel it in our heart as we turn on the media and see this constant effort always, okay, to create one group of people and to demonize another group of people. One group of people has a dupatta, the other group doesn't have. One wears white turban, the other one has a green turban. One has a black suit with it, the other one has a different kind of suit associated with it. This constant struggle. And then you see the struggle of humanity and you think that people have progressed and the Western societies have progressed, and then they go on, and then you hear a speech in which they're saying, well, actually, these people from the African countries, they don't, I am not even willing to perhaps recognize them as humans, and that they are underdeveloped and this and that, and they go on. So this constant struggle that we are all faced with it, how do we understand it, how do we analyze what is going on in the world out there, and then attempt to build a better world. It is a difficult topic, it requires boldness, it requires self-confidence, that I'm confident in who I am. I'm not worried about the fact that I will be coming across another person who will be better. Well, if the other person has something better to offer to me, I will accept that thing that they have to offer. I'm also doing that comfortable in my faith. Because if we are believers and we believe that God has created everything, then we have to accept everything that God has created. We cannot say that this is not a part of creation and this is a part of creation. Labeling things is the easiest thing in the world. So, grappling with these complex issues, I hope you will have an opportunity to have discussions with an open mind, that you will learn also to hear a very different point of view. And before responding, you will take a pause and you will allow that thought process to come in. You will wrestle with it, you will debate it, and then perhaps present another point. Most probably you will absolutely not agree with it. Then you will learn how to live with people whose opinions and views and faiths and beliefs you do not agree with. That is a necessary part of being inclusive. In fact, that is what is inclusive. Inclusive doesn't mean that everybody is going to believe and be the same way as you are. That acceptance, which requires faith, which requires self-confidence, which requires a big, big heart, where you will accept everything and everybody. We hope that this conference will be a key part in that journey of yours. Delighted to have you here at LUMS and to provide this opportunity, and thank you for sharing this time.
Thank you, Dr. Sohail. Now I would like to request Dean of the Suleiman Dawood School of Business, Dr. Jawad Syed, who is not only one of the leading academic experts on inclusive organizations, but without whose leadership and support this conference would not have happened. Dr. Jawad Syed. Vice Chancellor,
Azfar Nisar, Dr. Hassan Wala, Dr. Mohsin Bashir, Arzu, all the organizers of this conference, faculty members, students, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great honor and a pleasure to be part of a conference which is committed to inclusive public and organizational spaces. I'm embarrassed, Asfar, by your introduction. Indeed, I'm a student in the area of inclusion and diversity. And I must also make a confession that whereas I name all of my colleagues, I don't know the name of the cameraman. I thought that perhaps at the start of the day, I will make a small conversation with him and with those people who cleaned this room, who organized this room. But I thought that maybe I should make my ignorance transparent. That even in my approach to inclusion, even in my approach to diversity, I'm very elitist, I'm very selective. So you see that here we are talking about organizational and public spaces and the notion of inclusion. And all I can recall is a verse by Allama Iqbal, our national poet in Urdu. Falak ne unko ata ki hai, fauji ke jinhe, khabar nahi, ravishe, banda parvari kya. So you see that when we are at a position of responsibility, when we are at a position of authority, then this also means that not only in our words, but also in our actions, we have to be inclusive and we have to be responsible. Something which I have been failing as a dean of the school, and I have to make my ignorance and I have to make my lack of action transparent at this forum. I have a couple of things to share with you. 13 or 14 years ago, I conducted a small study. I, along with Professor Metcalfe, we are a proponent of post-colonial and critical scholarship in the area of management, leadership, diversity and inclusion. So therefore, the knowledge which is given by the West, we value it, we read it, but we do not treat it as a biblical verse. We evaluate it, and we try to contextualize it within our own context. 13 or 14 years ago, I thought that maybe I should be examining the words and actions and policy statements of the founder of this very nation, Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah, and try to identify what was his approach to diversity and inclusion. And I wrote a paper for a Journal of Social Policy on this topic. So for this morning, I thought that maybe I should not be sharing the whole paper, but perhaps a few points from the paper which may be relevant to inclusion within Pakistani context. There are 4 very small quotes by Jinnah, and I think it would be pertinent if I share those quotes with you. The first thing which Jinnah makes obvious in numerous of his speeches and statements is the emphasis on personal character. So here he says, character, courage, industry, and perseverance are the 4 pillars on which the whole edifice of human life can be built. So this is something which is required of all of us, wherever we are. In higher education sector, in primary or secondary education sector, in corporate sector, government organizations, NGOs, wherever we are. So personal character and Jinnah's teachings of personal character could be a guiding light for us. But then it also talks about some dimensions of inclusion. Let's look at the first dimension of inclusion. If we want to make this great state of Pakistan happy and prosperous, we should wholly and solely concentrate on the well-being of the people and especially of the masses and the poor. So here is a commitment to social class. Here is a commitment to social inclusion. Third element, which is the second element of inclusion, is there are 2 parts in the world, Jinnah says. One is the sword and the other is the pen. There is a great competition and rivalry between the 2. But then there is a third part, stronger than both, that of the pen. So here there is a commitment to gender. And we know that there are many examples in Jinnah's own statements and policies where women's participation was ensured, even back in 1930s and 40s. And finally, something which I found very interesting, and Beverly, you would perhaps also appreciate it, coming from a British context, that Jinnah also emphasizes contextual approach to economics. So let me narrate his statement on a contextual conceptualization of economic theory. The economic system of the West has created almost insoluble problems for humanity. Jinnah says, it has failed to do justice between people and to eradicate friction from the international field. On the contrary, it was largely responsible for the two world wars in the last half century. The Western world, in spite of its advantages of mechanization and industrial efficiency, is today in a worse mess than ever before in history. This is Jinnah's speech in 1948 to the inauguration of the State Bank of Pakistan, just to provide you the context. And he says, the adoption of Western economic theory and practice will not help us in achieving our goal of creating a happy and contented people. We must work our destiny in our own way and present to the world an economic system based on true Islamic concept of equality of humans and social justice. So, ladies and gentlemen, I wanted to share something with you based on Jinnah's ideology, but given that Azfar has referred to vernacular, that it's not just the English language, and with apologies to Beverly, I have to narrate something in a Pakistani local language, Saraiki, and this comes from Shakir Shujaabadi. Shakir Shujaabadi is one of the legendary Saraiki poets. If I were to identify that who is the most famous and valuable poet after Khwaja Ghulam Farid, it would be Shakir Shujaabadi. He is a living legend. Lives in Multan 70 miles, lives in Shujaabad 70 miles from Multan. So he gives a message, once again a message not only of nationalism but also of reforms and inclusion to people of Pakistan. It's in Saraiki, but I'm sure that many of us would be able to understand it. ए पाकिस्तान दे लोगों पलीतियां को मिटा देवो. That yes, Pakistan, the literal meaning of the word Pakistan is the land of the pure. But we cannot claim to be the land of the pure as long as the impurities of nepotism, of corruption, of favoritism, of bribery reside within us. So we have to get rid of those impurities. Nita e javi na rakhe e na ungu bala de. Otherwise, if we can't eradicate these impurities, then whosoever named Pakistan, return the name to him. We don't deserve this name. Jitha mukhlis namazi hin, o masjid bhi hai Baitullah. The mosque where worshippers are sincere, that is as sacred as Kaaba. Jo mulla di dukana hin, basita sari dhade ho. Otherwise, those mosques where mullah or the cleric is selling his merchandise, simply demolish those mosques. They are of no value to us. Ute insaf da parcham, tale insaf vikda pay. Eho jai har adalat ku bama amla uda devo. That reminds me of Pune Niyazi. Is shehre sang dil ko, Dr. Hasan, you would be, I'm sure you know that. Is shehre sang dil ko jala dena chahiye. Fir iski raat ko bhi uda dena chahiye. Milti nahi aman hame jis zameen par एक हश्र उस ज़मीन पे उठा देना चाहिए. You see that there are similar ideologies. Finally, it's a long poem. I will come to the last poem, and that is my assurance to you as well. सबा खराशी बहुत करती है. जे सच आखण बगावत है, बगावत ना है शाकिर का. चढ़ाओ नेज़े सर भावे, बड़े खैमे जला देवो. We know that नेज़े, sar, khema, it is a reference to the tragedy of Karbala. It is a reference to the great sacrifice of Imam Hussain. And I'm sure that many of us are aware that the word Imam literally means leader. It doesn't mean a political leader. It doesn't mean a king or a caliph or somebody who has a political position. It means the Prince of Hearts. So this means that there is a lesson for all of us, whether we are in the business world, whether we are in the world of higher education, wherever we are, we can make a commitment that we will be inclusive and we will try to serve the hearts of the people. As Sheikh Sadi says, Dil ba dastavar ke haji akbaras, take care of the hearts is even more precious than going on pilgrimage. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Jawad, for those inspiring words. We are privileged to have for our first keynote speech of the conference, Dr. Beverly Dawn Metcalfe, who is a visiting associate professor in international management at the American University of Beirut. Dr. Metcalfe has worked at the University of Manchester, Liverpool, Hull, and Staffordshire universities in England. Her research and teaching expertise include leadership development, leadership and ethics, developing women's leadership capabilities in the Middle East, feminism, social movements, and globalization. She has published extensively in leading journals such as Gender Work and Organization, International Journal of HRM, and Human Resource Development International. Dr. Metcalfe has had the honor to work globally in education, research, and consulting roles in multiple countries of the world, including Middle East. She has been a visiting professor in Griffith University, at Monash University in Australia, and in multiple other universities. Dr. Metcalfe is internationally recognized for translating social science into work policies and practices that promote sustainable business, especially staff development and capability. She has twice received the Academy of International Business Award for supporting gender awareness in international business and for her work on Middle Eastern women's role in international development. We are pleased that she will be talking about Islamic feminism in Middle Eastern countries, and we are delighted to have her. I would like to invite her for our speech.
Hello? Oh, that's better. I'm just wondering how I'm going to stand here and move the slides. Oh, brilliant. Okay. So that's that. Oh, right, that's much better. Can everybody hear okay? Because there seems to be some hissing in the background. Yeah, I can hear some hissing. It might just be the air conditioning. Good morning, everybody. There's some people just coming in. I'll let them sit down. co-chair for the Governance and Public Management Centre. Hello?
Yeah.
I wonder, have you got something like I can hold it? Is that better?
Maybe use another one.
Yes, I think so. Yeah. Close. I'm delighted to be here, everybody. I am honoured to be in the business school in LUMS. I'm delighted to be here at the Governance and Public Management Research Centre. And I'm delighted to be talking to you today about Islamic feminism, because I know in this audience there are some experts who know about Islamic feminism. In fact, Islamic feminism is very much part of the discourse in Pakistan and also in the Middle East, focusing on social change and empowerment agendas. And I wanted to echo what Jawad has alluded to, and that is about learning and inclusion. And, you know, I see this conference as an opportunity to work with people and learn from them. And I like to quote this little Chinese proverb that always means a lot to me, but it tries to even out, you know, potential differences and values everybody's input into ideas and philosophies. And this Chinese proverb goes something like this: intelligence is not recognizing what you do know, it's recognizing what you do not know. And that really is highlighting the importance of an individual human being is in a process of learning, is in a process of becoming. We are all becoming and we are learning as we all are embarking on our life journey. So I'm going to be talking about Islamic feminism today. And I want to consider this subject within the broad array of writings that focus on social movement, social change and social justice. And as part of this journey, I mean, I won't get to cover all of the themes, but as part of this journey, I want to think about how Islamic feminism can be associated with Islamic governance and Islamic models of development. And I'd also want to think about how Islamic feminism is connected to global movements that are going to unite many, many marginalised peoples. So it's part of that movement that is aiming for social change and social progress that is inclusive of everybody. And the reason why this is an important subject today, and although I'm going to be focusing on the Middle East, we need to contextualise that in terms of what is happening now in the global economy in terms of inequality. Whether you go to America, whether you go to England, whether you go to China, whether you go to Russia, the subject of inequality is absolutely at the number one agenda in terms of political and economic development. Everywhere in the world, with different governance systems, different political systems, the gap between the rich and the poor has never been so vast as it is today. So the discussion today on Islamic feminism, its linkage with inclusion, has got to be put into the context of the broader concerns of the vast inequalities that exist in many, many countries throughout the world. I've got to have two things to juggle. I'm not used to that. So. I want us to, first of all, acknowledge that what I'm going to present today, it is not absolute, it is not essentialist. I want to appreciate that we don't have one feminism, we have multiple feminisms. And a wonderful quote by Valentine Magadam: in every group, in every place, at every time, the meaning of feminism is worked on in the course of being and doing. So this isn't something that is just about women's behaviour and ideas, it's everybody's in society. We are always working and doing. We are always working and doing a variety of discourses associated with greater inclusion and social progress. And I want us to think about Islamic feminism in the sense of the feminist thinking that is also happening in the West. So I've given you the marker of, first, the rising inequality in every country, or nearly every country in the world. But also I want us to position Islamic feminism next to other social movements in the world. So you would imagine that if we have got stark inequalities, that feminism is a project going on in Europe, it's going on in China, and it's going on still in America. Well, no, actually, it is very, very worrying that feminist activism and feminist thinking is considered passé in Europe, it's passé in America, because there's this sense that feminism has been and gone. We've already reached equality and social justice. We don't need to address feminism in those countries. So what is fascinating for us to appreciate is that Islamic feminism is alive and well, and it's a leading movement, and that makes it fascinating and one of the key areas of social development and social progress. I'm not going to go into detail on this, but when we think about Islamic feminism, if you go to the West, they would perceive, or they do often perceive, that it is an oxymoron to say that Islam and feminism can be addressed in the same sentence, because there's a belief that Islam is aggressive to women. There's a belief that Islam is constraining their rights and abilities. Islam does not let them grow and develop. That is a discourse that does not appreciate Islam as a religion, does not appreciate Islam as a way of life and a way of living. And I want to highlight that in my talk and in my thinking, Islamic feminism is empowering. Islam as a religion is empowering for women. Islam does guarantee women's human rights. Islam is supportive of women's skills development and leadership development. And I'm preaching that in the Middle East, but my journey, my intellectual journey as an academic, is to preach that in Europe, in Asia, and in America, where they are not really knowledgeable about Islam and what it means in everyday life. And I've used Fatima Mernissi as an example, who was one of the first writers to talk about women and Islam. And she has changed her perspectives, she's changed her ideas over the time. And she now very much is an Islamic feminist, and her early writings, where she talked about male domination and male control, she doesn't think that anymore. Islam is empowering. That's my message today. Is the sound okay, or is it? Because it's like I've got to have it really close to my mouth, isn't it? Sorry, could you just get the clicker for me? It's just dropped. Okay, so Islamic feminism is moving and it's shaking ideas and philosophies. In the broader world, especially in the global north, feminism is passé. You know, the idea of social progress, it's been done. We don't need to change it. But I want us to appreciate that on this journey, a very short journey, when I'm discussing Islamic feminism, not everybody agrees with the term Islamic feminism in the Middle East or Asia, because largely feminism is seen as a colonial project. It's promoting Western ideas, it's promoting ideas that are relevant to the global north and not to the global south. And I want us to appreciate that as long as we are committed to social development, as long as we're committed to improve the rights of men and women and all marginalised groups, we could say that we believe in equal opportunity, and that, you know, that would be important for feminism as well. So I want to try and take us on this journey where we're not seeing actionism and social progress within the colonial system and colonial powers. And I've already highlighted that basically in today's Middle East, we are seeing the Islamic ideas as central to social progress and social development. And I am not taking the place that sees women as other or needs assistance. You know, Muslim women need saving. I don't think we do. We just need to work together for humanity to move forward. Feminising change. I really want to talk about the idea that Islamic feminism can be a force for good. It is allowing people the opportunity to address areas of social justice that may be pertinent in a particular geographic region. I want us to perceive Islamic feminism as supporting and contributing to women's social movement. But we've also got to think, is promoting Islamic feminism the only way we can advocate social change, new ideas for economic development? Question mark. It's quite hard to read. So why should we be concerned with Islamic feminism? I've already highlighted the term feminism has become a difficult word globally, but it's important to appreciate neoliberal neoliberal economics and policies haven't really achieved many of the gains that one would expect. Let's look at China, Russia, Europe, and also America. There are still vast divisions between different groups. There are still vast divisions between men and women. And I want us to think that when we're looking at social progress with a lens of Islamic feminism, then we can highlight how Islam can be empowering and supportive. The key difference, if we think about how we understand the economic world. It's addressed in the idea of the politics of difference or the politics of sameness. The politics of sameness is associated with Europe and North American ideologies which sees men and women as the same. So in preaching sameness, they are denying the lived subjectivities of women, and they're denying that there may be some policies and support mechanisms that women may particularly need. So the politics of sameness, I feel, is disempowering for women and disempowering for many social groups because it's not acknowledging strategic or practical needs of specific population. So the politics of sameness is very much embedded in many of the global north economic philosophies. And associated with that politics of sameness is an individual policy. It's the rights of the individual, the right of an individual to do this and that. Classical economic thinking, does away with this idea of collective agency, whereas the politics of difference acknowledges that men and women do have differences, that men and women require different policy frameworks in order to support their development in the economy, in the polity and in society. And a politics of difference also incorporates a broader collective ideology so that you can bring together people with similar concerns and similar issues. So I use this idea. Is this better? Do you want me to use this?
Is it just TV mics?
I just wondered why you were bringing it when not presenting. So what I'd like to do is inject the feminine, and I'm using that word feminine deliberately, as a way of knocking out and challenging masculinist interpretations. And of course, many people have been interpreting Hadith, interpreting the Quran through various processes of fiqh, and I think many people would agree that many of those readings and interpretations have been masculinist, and it is those masculinist interpretations that have been disempowering. So we should be concerned not with Islam as a faith, but in terms of what representations of Islam have been promoted in various fiqh translations, and also the way in which it has marginalised female voices and marginalised female interpretations of the Quran and the Hadith. And I would like to use the word feminising fiqh to inject women into the story, so women and other scholars can also look at the cultural interpretations to see if they can be interpreted in contemporary light. And that philosophy of interpreting the Quran and the Hadith in contemporary light is something that is commonplace throughout the writings. I'm sure that you're familiar with that. So interpretation then is key to understanding new visions and new ideas about social progress and about women's rights. So let's think about what has happened in the world that we can draw on to illustrate how Islamic feminism is making a difference and how it can be received to advancing social progress. And, you know, if there are any Egyptian ladies in here, I do acknowledge that the coal law in Egypt, there has been much debate about how far this is being due to Islamic feminism. There is genuine commitment by many scholars in Egypt to say that they have had a role in doing this and giving women the right to divorce in a public court that wasn't there before. When you ask activists, do you think Islamic feminists contributed to the new coal law in Egypt? You get about 70% say yes. But there were also other activists who wouldn't necessarily call themselves Islamic feminists. They would associate their identity with a commitment to social change and social justice. And if we think about the equality codes in Indonesia and in Morocco especially, they have been drafted by bringing together not only legal scholars, but feminist legal scholars, policymakers, government officials, to try and support a greater ethic for women's role in society and their support in community and their support in many public roles. At the moment, we've also got Islamic feminism going head-on in Nigeria. It's an interesting case, and women have been acquitted of adultery due to reinterpretation of the Quranic text. And this process of interpretation, the itijidat, I want us to see that as empowering, and that's the reason why I call it feminizing fiqh. So let's have a look at some of the things that are going on in the world. I'll just mention Saudi Arabia because some are arguing that Saudi Arabia could potentially become the world centre for Islamic feminism. There has been a lot of discussion and debate with Mohammed bin Salman, asked recently on CBS News, do you think men and women are equal? And he said, yes, absolutely. Men and women are human beings and we are all equal. So giving us very good messages that he is committed to social change. Now there has been a lot of initiatives as well with women's organisations in Saudi, and they've been very active in the social media arena and been supporting initiatives. And one of them is Together to End Male Guardianship. That went viral in Saudi. And a concern is, so we've got all these good things going on in Saudi. There are some other initiatives, and some of you may be surprised to know, as part of the legislation that allowed women to drive over the age of 30, if you're under 30, you can't drive. That Saudi has actually got a new draft of a legislation for sexual harassment. So they want to criminalise sexual harassment. wow, it's not really being advertised, but that was in the same legislation for women's rights in 70. There are also many media and film and artistic females mainly, and they call this collective group Loving a Headscarf, and they want women in the artistic industry to represent and always promote these positive messages about women being empowered with and through Islam. And it's also nurturing them so they can promote the essence of social progress and critique and try and do away with these old-fashioned masculinist interpretations that aren't really representative of daily life and organisation life. And I'll just quickly show you this. I'm sure some of you will recognise this. So I really apologise, but I'm not used to having to hold it so close. So, Islamic feminism in Pakistan, it's here. As long as it's going to be committed to ideas about new ways of supporting social progress, let's support that. That's very important. In the paper, I do go into detail on this. So what do we need to think about then? What do we need to think about in the global economy? So just to recap, Islamic feminism is really gaining ground, but as long as we are still recognising that Islamic feminism isn't always named that, as long as there is a movement towards supporting social change and progress, we should all be committed to that. But we need to appreciate that in many parts of the world, feminism has been done and the mobilisation is very weak. And just as a contrast, do you think there's much feminism in Russia or in China? No. Do you think there is much emphasis on women's rights in China and women's rights in Russia? No. So we need to put it into context. The developing world, the global south, is still being challenged because of its inequalities. Feminism is still being debated, but it's very much marginalised. And I want us to think about how are we going to understand the ideas of Islamic feminism or the ideas of a social movement, because it's being linked to nationalism and nationalist agendas. This is where the linkage with space and the dimensions of exclusion and inclusion come into play. That is absolutely key. Freedom to move, freedom to be, freedom to express oneself in public space, private space, in many geographic territories. We need to challenge that. But how far can we think that this social movement, this development initiative, is going to be associated with nationalism and nationalist agendas? Why that's important is because some people argue that Islamic feminism has been grabbed by the state, and they're using it as part of the state building and the economic development of the state. And one can understand that, because if you look at the Gulf Cooperation Council, most of those countries support women's activism and they support women's NGOs. They give them money. They give them free offices, space. They fund them. So they are funding the space in Riyadh, in Abu Dhabi, in Cairo. So there are funding for these initiatives. Has then that been hijacked by the state? Or can we say that is a genuine commitment to social change? And I think that is something we're going to have to consider. So is state feminism Islamic feminism? I don't want to suggest that it is, but some of these issues are important. And we do need to think how we're going to connect different people who have got a commitment to social change, the empowering of individuals, the empowering of their economic, political and social and health rights. We need to think how they're going to be brought together, because these social media initiatives have been given power because of the online social media activism that has generated and nurtured a lot of support. And how then do we conceptualize resistance and action, activism, if it's if it's on the internet galaxy? How can we understand what is happening and who is part of that body? And I'm going to finish with this slide. It's very important. We need to have the collective and the individual join together. We need to connect the local with the global and also the regional. And we need to expand the space. And we need to expand the space not just as the household, not just as the community, but as the state and also in other regional and global spaces. And we need to try and bring these individuals together. But mostly, if we can support the idea of social change and social progress, then Islamic feminism has made a small contribution. But it's not the only activist ideology that is going on in the world at the moment. But I feel very privileged. I've worked in many countries, but the social movement is probably very strong in the Middle East, unlike in Russia or in China. But let's end on an interesting note. Does anybody know where there has been lots of women's marches and they're specifically addressing the idea of sexual harassment? A country in the world, you all know it, and there's been lots of women's marches to end sexual harassment. India, I wasn't thinking of India, but yes, yeah. And any others? It's America. America, just to show you don't know how the world is going to evolve. The great intensity and resistance to many of the everyday harassment practices in Washington, in politics, and also in Hollywood have amazed the world, and they are still amazing us every day. I'd like to end now, and thank you everybody for listening. I would be very interested to know and hear from women who are involved in Islamic feminism in Pakistan or indeed anywhere else. So thank you so much. And I do apologise for the microphone. Thank you so much. I thought somebody was going to chair it, but I think we've got some time for questions. Or should we go straight to the coffee? Who was chairing it?
If anyone has any
Am
questions,
I running on time? Or should I just...
Does anyone have any questions they would like to ask? Yes.
Sorry, I can't hear her.
इसको
What I can understand from your talk was you were talking about Islamic and you were right to point out that it sounds like not Islamic. But to me, what it sounded like was more of a perception of Arab feminism may not be the same in Arab countries. Other parts of the world, now it seems that the perception of Islamic feminism is more related to Arab feminism rather than Islamic. We must distinguish between Islam and Arab culture. See, when we're in Pakistan, I am not bound by Arab standards of social behavior or whatever is prevalent today. I am bound by a different social norm, which may just be as I don't know, restricting or aggressive, or may not be aggressive. I don't know. It may have different norms. But we must distinguish between Arab culture and Islam. Different areas, and they must be perceived as that. And therefore, feminism should also take form there. We cannot have the same Islamic feminism across the whole world.
I heard most of that. Yes, no, I would absolutely agree. Multiple feminisms, and I have worked mainly on the Arab Middle East, but I wouldn't, suggest that Arab feminism is the overarching label for Pakistan or Indonesia. I just wanted to use the examples of Saudi Arabia because of the discourse that they're going to be leading Islamic feminism within probably the Arab world. But if you look at some of the most advances, if you look at the women in the Sisters of Islam in Malaysia, and if you look at the Muwadana laws, how come it's actually got louder just now? I can actually hear myself now. So I'm sorry about that. So yeah, that's very powerful in Indonesia. And let's open up the debate. I think it's important that we do connect ideas and we have this transnational dialogue so we can all learn together in this big galaxy. And absolutely, we've got multiple feminisms, but we've got multiple Islamic feminisms as well. So, yes, I totally agree with your comment. Thank you.
Hello.
I have visited the organization started a bit early, so how did you define Islamic feminism? Because there is some debate about in Islamic literature, meaning of academic literature, about distinction between Islamic and Muslim. Muslim represents like the act of Muslim, perhaps, or situation in Muslim country, and Islamic base, although there are multiple interpretations in either case, but those are based on Islamic logic, tradition, and so forth.
Yes. I mean, Badran, for example, uses the idea of holistic feminism or Muslim feminism. And I would say that we've got to be sensitive and appreciate these different ideas. And really, it's highlighting that you do have multiplicity. So, if I was going to say, what do I understand by Islamic feminism? I understand it as meaning many different versions, and it is important. It is understood in a social, and political, and economic context, and also, obviously, a religious context. In the future, I'm interested in thinking about that in terms of how it links to Islamic governance and Islamic economic development, which is why I highlighted the issues of nationalism. So I really want to keep it open-ended and see, Islamic feminism as something that will evolve, but it will be always positioned within a spatial context. Most of my paper was written with the Arab Middle East in mind. We need to think there's things going on in Nigeria, in Indonesia. So let us, let all of these ideas come to us, float through the air and come to us in this galaxy, so we can be inclusive, because it's, and make sure nobody is not excluded. But I'd love to hear your points. In the week we can spend time discussing that. I'm doing some research this week. I'm teaching some of the students on qualitative research, so I'm looking forward to that this week. And any other questions? Or you can just come and chat to me over the conference. I find now I can actually hear myself. I feel that you probably didn't hear what I was saying because of the microphone.
Hi, Dr. Metcalfe. Thank you so much for your talk. My question is, I appreciate you mentioning that there are multiple feminisms, and but also given the trail of thought that if feminism is complete in other parts of the world, for example in Canada, a couple of years ago at the federal election, the hijab became a very contentious issue. It was quite central to the debate. It was kind of one of the most defining factors, where the ruling party was going to ban the hijab, and there was a emergence of resistance, and a lot of the voice was mainly young Muslim women who spoke up against it, and it didn't. The ruling party lost that election. So I feel that, given the current political context within Canada as well, I feel that this conversation is going to continue on. So that voice of resistance, would you place that within Islamic feminism, or would that be a larger conversation on multiculturalism?
Well, I would say possibly both, because because it's looking at the social and cultural practices as they are played out in Canada. But, you know, I worry that you've got, you know, a very liberal country wanting to impose rights on what you can wear. And, you know, I think if you wear the hijab or not, it's down to personal choice. It isn't, you know, it's not something that should be legislated against. It should be a woman's right to choose. And I hold my hands in despair when you think of somewhere like Canada or even in France, where, you know, where they have banned the hijab in some places. I just don't understand it. So both. And any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you for your talk. I think you've probably been following the return of Malala Yousafzai to Pakistan last night, and this is actually quite relevant because you know, these women in some of these Islamic Muslim countries have been really, you know, been involved in the struggle for human rights for a very, very long time. But when they are rewarded with a Nobel Prize, it's a kiss of death for them. I mean, I'm sure you know about the Bakul Gurman. She was the first woman in the Arab world to win a Nobel Prize. And she was involved in the central movement for struggle against the dictator, Abdullah Saleh. She's now living in exile in Turkey. We all know about Shirin Ebadi in Iran, how courageously she fought. She was a judge, you can't easily, she was before she won the Nobel Prize, she was at the center of the human rights discourse in Iran. She's living in exile as well. We have our own Malala Yousafzai, and we all know about what happened to her. So what I want you to direct your attention is what happens, you know, these women are very courageous women. In any other part of the world, they will be recognized as trailblazers. I mean, their own countries don't recognize them. I mean, you're talking about a dichotomy between state feminism and Islamism. You have to replace these women. You know, because when they are recognized by the Nobel Prize, and then it suddenly becomes a case of death for them because their own people. I mean, I can't even tell you the sort of conspiracy theories my students have been spinning out. Why did they win the Nobel Prize? Why did Malala win the Nobel Prize? Was she not? I mean, educated people talking like that. So where would you place these women in terms of Islamic feminism or even feminism for that?
Yeah, it's really difficult because if you've got Islamic governance framework, do you work within the system to support social change, or do you try and work outside the system to get regime change? And the reason why I mention is that, you know, feminists in the global north never said we need a new regime. They were quite happy with liberal capitalism and had never challenged the regime. In terms of recognition, you know, if you were going to judge social progress in law and legislation, there would be a global agreement that those people who've been in the system have been able to get more change. And that's sort of being reinforced with the, you know, with the revolutions, you know, in Tunisia and in Egypt. You know, women aren't necessarily in a better place now than they were before. In fact, it's probably worse. So, are you in or out of the system? It's a difficult one. We could chat over coffee about that one because I do think you know you need to sort of be part of the dialogue if you're going to change. But at some stage there has got to be you know a line that you cannot go over in terms of human rights. And let's not forget, we have got many countries in the world that have got many imprisoned people, whether you're from the global north or the global south, irrespective of you being a Muslim majority country. So human rights is is something for all of us to think about. And I think I'm being. Is it time for coffee?
Yes.
Time for coffee. Thank you so much, and do come and chat to me. I'm really keen to learn from you as well. So thank you so much.
I request all of you to please join us here for tea. And the next panels will start at 11:45. Thank you.